Perfect Death here, and this is Kenshi. Figured I'd revisit this game. It's been a while, and this is an interesting, like, sandbox RPG kind of game that has some interesting ways of approaching the sandbox RPG. The setting of this world is a post-apocalypse. Essentially, things are pretty bad, stuff has collapsed and then collapsed again, so there's a lot of interesting styles in here. It's kind of like a weird post-apocalypse um, samurai kind of game, but I've semi-cheated here. I essentially imported some characters that I've had made before, because this game can take a long time to train up your people. To sort of put it simply, you get stronger by doing stuff, and an example would be like if you run, you'll get faster at running. If you load your character down so that they are over their weight capacity, then they'll have a strength experience modifier. So there's ways that you can train up your strength, which is just leave your character to do stuff. I kind of did this with some characters that I recruited without importing, and I'm in this town called Mongrel, and you can actually buy some of the buildings. So some of these buildings are owned. This building, for example, I could buy it for 2,000 cats. Currently I have this Y house and this small shack. This small shack actually has some storage in it, like an iron storage. So what I actually like for this certain area is that right outside the gate here, there's an iron resource. So I set a job, for which you can do by holding shift, and then you right click, and then it'll put a job onto your list here, and I would have this person mine iron ore, and then once the iron ore output filled up, which in this case is 5, he would automatically carry it over to a nearby storage in range, and this storage is in range, it's now full. So and then he would go back and he would mine more, and then eventually I could sell off the ore, and I could buy food to feed him. And so that was a pretty neat way of just AFK, allowing people to build up both strength and athletics, as he would run back and forth doing that, and it would also build up his labor skill. And because it's so close to the gate, if the local enemies around here get close and attack, there's a bunch of gate guards, which they haven't stood over here. I think it's because I just recently loaded up, so they're gonna respawn and populate through. And there's the leg. There we go. So there's lots of NPCs. These guys are actually pretty strong, these shinobi guards. This dude actually has both of his legs missing, and he's replaced them with robot legs. The Mongrel faction are pretty hardcore guys. This dude's just sitting there. He's all beaten up, and he's rocking a Fogman body. The sort of lore around this area is that these are the Foglands, and you can tell because there's all these pockets of fog around here, and inside are the Fogmen, and they are pretty nasty. They're not too strong individually. Their stats are quite weak, but there's a lot of them, and they like to snack on people who wander through. So I wonder. Let's see. I have some old video or old pictures of some of my forts. Like you can eventually build up your own faction and your own forts. So this was one fairly recent one that I did where I went to where is it exactly? So, oh, I pause so I can't think. Ah, I think I broke my map because I opened it up and I alt-tabbed. I didn't like that. But I think it'll... There we go, I just had to hit escape there. Yeah. I'll pull up a map over here. There we go. Zoom, 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 zoom. So over here, I have this particular base I set up right here on the world map and on this little plateau mountain here. And it was an interesting place because this zone is a war zone. There's a whole bunch of factions fighting in the area. And I basically built up a fort to just go out and get fights. And then this would be a place to chill out and heal and produce food and sleep to recover from wounds and craft gear, things like that. It was a nice training base, and it was a pretty strong spot to be in. And let's see if I go over here. This is a little picture I took when I first found Fogmen, and I realized what happens when they captured you. Yeah, they're kind of cannibals, and they will eat people alive. And you can lose limbs in this game. I made some pictures of some various stuff here. But in some of my playthroughs, I've shown off some of my character progression. So I did like a picture of a five-man squad here, and these guys had just recently, I would just run a cycle of having them go out, get into a fight, get beat up, come back to a town where I bought a house, and then they would just sleep in that, recover their injuries. And gradually they would craft up some gear while they rested, and I had produced a ton of leather in order to train the armor smith. And so they all had a lot of armor gear at this point. And then eventually I went into the Foglands with them. And by this point I had swapped out their leather armor for metal armor. And they all became pretty tanky. And then I went and fought Fogmen. They're not too good for training partners if you're looking to get really strong, but they are good for training crowd control. Like, there's a hidden stat for fighting crowds. And so they got pretty good at dealing with large numbers of enemies. Eventually I ended up setting up this like base on a raised piece of ground here. And while I was building the base, my neighbors were noisy. They're very noisy. They just kept eating random people that were wandering through. And yeah, hard to get a good night's sleep in the Foglands. And so then every now and then I'd go down and I'd clear out their little camp, wreck their party. And I found this was a very interesting scene, that after I cleared out huge numbers of Fogmen, one of my characters was just like, what a mess. I'm like, yep. I had a hard time clearing out all of the bodies. I got like some people having a random fight over there, and I think I actually had to just rely on the game to despawn the bodies as they piled up. I also had to install a mod to get rid of the sound of flies, because that was horrible to go down here and hear just this droning of flies. Then eventually I went and I hung out with the fishmen. And yeah, this was the first time I'd found the fishmen. So the fishmen are way down here. So I actually set up like a base down here because I wanted to, there was an update that opened up this corner of the map, And so I set up a base down here, and I didn't realize that there was a bunch of an entirely different faction down there that just would swim through the ocean and try to attack me. They're pretty cool to fight. So this is a very big, quite open world. There's a couple different factions around here, and things can get quite difficult when you're playing through this. So now, yeah, all my alt tabbing is messing with my my controls. It's not letting my mouse do anything. Hooray. I wonder if I should just reload. Oh, I can't even. Nah, don't alt tab. How did I fix this before, I wonder? There we go. There we go. Now it's working. So I am all the way over here in the Fog Islands and sitting inside a mongrel. And oh, whoops! I sent somebody off to go to bed. Oh well. I've actually got on the roof here. I've already got beds set up. I have my two characters here who are set up to essentially create a supply of food now. That's essentially what these two characters are here for. I have some hydroponic farms. I've been using this as like a little temporary headquarters while I would send out my main group to go and find like ancient lab ruins and stuff like that to loot research tech from, because you can go into your research bench and you can research stuff. And some of this has resulted in me being able to upgrade like my weaponsmith, so I've been able to create higher tier weapons. So I have these yellow grade weapons which do a lot more damage. I've gradually increased my armor smith skill, so he can make, you know, yellow grade equipment. And so these guys are, I've essentially got 3 characters. I mean, I could have imported more from my previous run, but then that would be way too easy if I had like a full huge group of really highly trained people. Some of my characters I've managed to lose a couple of limbs on. For example, let's compare them here. So I got Beep, because you always have to have Beep. He's a recruitable character. And then I've got 2 others. So this character Strip has both of their legs still intact, and they run at a speed of 82 miles per hour. Then we have Swift over here. He's lost 1 leg, and I've replaced it with a scout leg that is 31% more move speed. So he goes 38 miles per hour. He is a hiver, so his actual run speed is faster than a human's. And then Beep, who's also a hiver, he's lost both of his limbs, and they're both now scout legs. And he is 49 miles per hour. If I got masterwork limbs, so let's just compare them. Let's have them go full speed. We'll run over to the roboticist. Right, go zoom. Once they fight through the door, poor Beep's ramming and everything because he can't corner. Yes, Beep, you're not a skeleton, but he thinks he's a skeleton. So, let's see, what do you have? You have high grade. Every now and then the shops will replenish some of their parts, but yeah, he's only got a high grade scout leg. If Beep had double master work grade limbs, he could run faster than the fastest predator in the game, which is quite useful because the fastest predator in the game is horrible to fight, and what the? Oh, you're I think I'm misclicking or something, so he just ran off. Fortunately, this guy runs 20 miles per hour, which is fast enough for him to not get caught by the Fogmen. The Fogmen, I think, are 19 miles an hour, so he should be safe anyway, as long as he doesn't stop running. As there's a death yard right there. So, that's... I wonder, are there any Fogmen? Are there any Foggies hanging around here? I can show some combat, maybe. There we go. Zoom. Oh, there we go. We got some Fogmen. Hello. There we go. And there's one right there. So this game is kind of turn-based in a sense, where you'll have different actions that'll happen. So I have a mod that increases the combat slots from 1 to 5. So like 1 combat slot means that you can only attack 1 at a time. But I have 5, so when you're outnumbered it makes it more difficult because 5 people can attack me at the same time. That's why it's a bit more chaotic than it usually would be. So even though I'm taking quite a lot of hits, these guys are just using like blunt objects, and I have, you know, yellow grade armor, so I'm taking very little damage. You can see here 0 damage to the head for as well. This is I think it's like a mix of cut and blunt damage, but because their weapons are horrible at cutting, they're just doing blunt damage. And you can see how much the damage is being mitigated, so my armor's doing up quite a lot to reduce the damage. But even though these characters are really strong, they're still getting pummeled quite well. So fighting can be quite risky in this game still. So a lot of it is also managing your risk. Now, I probably could end this very fast because my characters here also have a very high martial arts stat. So they're actually kind of handicapped because martial arts is really hard to train, but it is stupidly overpowered. So yeah, they basically do enough damage to these guys have like 50 HP per part, and he just did, you know, over 200. Actually, that's like 300 damage to his arm, and he only has like 50 HP. So once he's below minus 50, he loses his body part. So that was like overkill. And yeah, martial arts is really hard to train. Where are you going? You can't run from Beep. Beep is too fast. So the good thing about, like, one of the problems with using martial arts is that you can't block, right? You can dodge, but dodging isn't really blocking. You can still get hit, and I'm also wearing heavy armor right now, so I could switch this out to a armor that's better for blocking stuff. It's just I sent these guys to go fight some enemies that hit pretty hard, and I wanted some blocking ability so that I wouldn't take damage, because they do have pretty high melee defense, so they can block pretty well. And if you're fighting something with a big AoE, like a huge swing or something like that, if they target one person and that person dodges but the other person is there, they'll probably get hit by that, and they won't recognize that they're going to get hit, and they won't dodge, so they'll take the damage. So big crowd fights can be really risky, especially if you're relying a lot on martial artists, so it's good to diversify. So yeah, here, I'll just have everybody rest up quick. Actually, I'll put Beep on the repair bed because he has some damaged legs. Assuming he doesn't get stuck trying to get up the stairs. And there we go. So that'll recharge. And yeah, I have another mod, which are these moisture collectors. Normally, when you're in a town, you can't. The only way to get water is if the town has a well. And this town doesn't have a well, so, and it doesn't rain, so I can't use a rain collector. I have to use these moisture collectors. It's a mod, converts electricity into water, and then you put the water into these hydroponic things, and then it generates food. This is like a higher tech way of farming, when normally you would have to rely on growing stuff outside, which really depends on the biome. As right now I'm growing green fruit and rice, and what that does is I can cook that into gohan. So gohan it's an okay food. It has 75 nutrition, which isn't bad, but it's pretty simple to make. There is like a stronger one, which would be stuff with let's see, where is meat wrap is 50, gohan 75, dust which is that. So yeah, it is pretty good at 75. I know there's a stronger one, but it's like a third tier one that you can't actually craft unless you get a mod for it, which is like, I don't actually have one on me, but Gohan's generally fairly cheap because it doesn't require much work to it, but the way to grow it is you need rice, which is grown in a swamp, and then you need green fruit, which requires a green biome, and so those are two very different biomes. So it's very hard to get both of these going at the same time in the same place. So you can set up multiple bases actually, and you can try to do that on your own, which is again a big part about why this is a sandbox game, about what you want to do, what's the purpose. I mean, you could, for example, go and fight like the Holy Nation faction. There's a whole bunch of factions. Some of these have actual effects that'll happen, like if you take out the as you take down like the Holy Nation, for example, different things will happen as their cities fall. You'll see different effects. The Shek, which are over here, will occupy some of their territory, or the United Cities will, who are fighting them over in this section, they'll take over some stuff. Or if you were to go and mess with the slave industry in the Great Desert, then you'll see like starving guards as they can't provide enough food for their people. And so there's quite a few different things that you can do that you have an impact on. And in general, a lot of it is just you going out and figuring out for yourself, as much of it is quite hidden, semi-secret. You'll find some that the game kind of prompts you into, like it'll say, oh hey, you can help the Shek fight the Holy Nation. Or you might get leads onto like the anti-slave organizations and things like that. Generally the game leads you towards the Ashlands, where you get to find out what's in here and how it pertains to the whole story of the world. Or you could just play it however you wanted to. Right? You could just wipe out all the factions, or you can align with a faction. It doesn't specifically say whether anybody is good or bad. It's even possible to like align with some of the psycho factions over in this area as well. I know some people like to buddy up with the crab raiders over in this area. because there's like 3 different factions in this area, and they're all fighting each other, and one of them has an army of giant crabs that they use, and if you buddy up with them, you can buy crabs that'll join as pets in your group, and then you can raise them and train them to have a crab army. So there's some pretty interesting things that you can set about and do in this game if you take the time to explore it and figure it out. Now there is a sequel to this in development right now. There currently isn't too much. The devs have just shown off how the game looks in the Unreal Engine that they're now using. This is in the Vision engine made by Havoc, and so they're currently working on building the new game on Epic's Unreal Engine. So it's looking pretty cool, and so we'll see how that game looks. It's actually apparently a prequel that takes place 1,000 years earlier. And since this game is a post-apocalypse, and a post-apocalypse, stuff doesn't really look much fancier. So, we'll see. That'll be it for this video.